everybody, and joining me today are the authors of Feet First. We've got Gunther here, we've got Troy Parsons here, and we're going to find a little bit about them and about this book. So let's start with you guys. Who's Greg? Who's Troy? What's going on?
Well, I'm Greg, he's Troy.
And what's your background, guys?
Well, at heart I'm a country boy, but
are we going to break out into song? You know?
Well, I could, but you wouldn't want to hear it. No, I grew up on a farm, but from that early age, I guess it put that entrepreneur spirit into me because Dad always encouraged me to go out and work for yourself and make something of yourself, and that's what I've done.
Fantastic. And what about you, Troy?
Well, I grew up on the Gold Coast like yourself, and made my way to Brisbane and went through a series of choosing my own adventure. Ended up being a pod and have been for 20 years. And I, for 3 years I was a podiatrist who had a business, and then through an evolution became a business owner who just happened to be a podiatrist, which was probably the pivotal shift in my business journey.
Well, we're going to find a bit about that because it's all about this book. And how about you guys tell me, what is this book about? What's Feet First about?
Well, look, I guess it really is about two ordinary blokes who share, and quite openly in a lot of spots their ups and their downs, and how we've worked our way through those, and the sort of things that we've come up against, and what we've learned along the way. So in essence, it's really a book that I think is very personal, to be honest. When I look at it, I think, wow, did I really write that? But some of it's pretty close to the bone, but I think it does share a very open and honest story.
There is a rawness about it, and I did like how the two of you opened yourselves up on a personal and professional level. What did you learn about writing the book, Troy?
It's probably, we had a lot of feedback along the way from people that we'd worked with through the Podiatry Hive, members and potential members who we'd presented to in various forums, and they asked more and more about our journey and the trials and tribulations of where I got to on my own, and then how I slowly turned the ship around that was on fire for many years through the help of Greg. And a number of people said, wow, look, you guys have got a really interesting story, and I'd love to hear more about that. And we'd also had been doing a lot of our own work through being coached and mentored by others, and they continually talked about there's a book in everyone. And that it's pretty profound to actually sit back and dig into your own journey and learn a bit more about yourself, and to help communicate with others. But I think between that and Greg and I hearing more than once that you need to write this book, I think we came back from the UK and we just said, look, it's probably about time we did this. And so here we are.
Greg, what about the publishing journey? You and I worked quite closely together. What did you learn there?
Well, it's a long journey. There's a lot to it. I think for me there was a lot of parts of my life that I'd forgotten, to be honest, and this process for me brought back a lot of that. And I think, like Troy was just saying, going back to some of those things and thinking about it perhaps in a different light, and what did that actually mean for me at the time. So it brought up a lot of those memories, and I was able to I think relate a lot more to those and understand where they fit in my whole journey that I've been through life. So it's a process that certainly probably I didn't realise what we were putting ourselves in for when we did it, and it was a journey that took probably a good 18 months or more to go through. But when I met with you and you held that first book up for me to hold for the very first time, it did give me goosebumps. I've got to be honest, it really was a memorable occasion to actually have this thing fully in print. I
never get sick of that, and all the authors that I've published for, the one thing that keeps the momentum going for me is the look on your face when you first hold your book, and it's quite special because I don't think we realise the impact it has when it's come to life in that form. Okay, Troy, who's the book aimed at? Who's the target market here?
Well, initially it was podiatry business owners, and through the process we realised that it's actually probably connects with far greater audience than that. And so then we kind of widened the focus to healthcare professionals who happen to have a business. But now it's really, I think, anyone who's looking to be on their own business journey, or even those who are looking to start up or venture into entrepreneurship, because what we've learned and worked through over time is something that it's part of business. And I think what we've referenced through our own respective upbringings and the experiences that have occurred in our lives have helped form us and help crystallise what's happened through business. And I think that connects with a lot of people. So I think anyone who's in business and anyone who might give them pause to have a look at what's happened in their own life, and whether it be through parenting or business or whatever, and the impact that that has when they actually stop and reflect.
All the millennials that are looking to be the next best thing, this was something that I was talking to you about, that I felt there was a very strong market there as well. So the demographic is quite wide, which is very rare when you're looking at a lot of books like this. Usually it's quite niche and targeted. But I do think that there is quite a large market for it.
Well, it's interesting, Ocean, around that, because the millennials, the research is showing that they are very entrepreneurial and they do want to create something that makes a difference. Probably a little bit in difference to my generation. So, we did things because it was sort of bred into us to do it. But whereas millennials coming through now, and there's many of them, they're coming through this spirit and attitude that they do want to actually contribute something. And I agree. I think some of the things that we've done, people should look at and be able to relate to.
Well, that's the reality check. And to support what you're saying is that if you've got a millennial that's looking at learning from other people, and they go and get the Brendan Burchard books and all that sort of stuff, and there's a little bit of an untouchable feel about some of those authors, and you've got this two ordinary bloke thing that you guys are doing, and it automatically creates a relationship where these millennials are going to go, well, these guys have walked the journey, they've opened themselves up, there's got to be something tighter for me here.
Look, that was something very important to us when we were doing this, that we wanted it to be relatable. I agree, like we all look up to the Bransons of the world and others, and they've achieved an awful lot. There's no argument with that, but I think, as you say, it's a little bit unreachable for a lot of people when they sort of look at that. Whereas we just wanted this to be something that was down to earth and very relatable for people to connect with, and that was, I guess, for me, contextually sitting above everything else that we were doing in this book.
Well, all authors have an opportunity to find out if their vision comes to life when they get the feedback. So what's the feedback been for the book?
Look, it's been really positive. I think people have got their own little takeaways coming out of it, but we're getting some very positive takeouts from people who are finding the relatability of it to be helpful. They can actually understand. A lot of the people that are reading it actually know Troy and I as well. So I had one person come up to me and say, look, I actually didn't know that about you. Like I've known you for all these years, and there's stuff in there that I just never knew. So I'm getting a little bit of that. And there are some really, I think, good takeouts that people are taking for themselves, which is, I guess, I find very pleasing. I've had a couple say, you've helped me understand the importance of asking for help, and we tend not to do that, particularly as blokes. We tend to try and work our way through stuff, whereas I've had some comment back from people saying, I get it now. Like, it's okay to ask for help, and that was a big one for some, and I thought. Some of the other things were that they're actually enjoying the journey. That it's actually quite normal what I'm feeling. I'm going through this for myself, but you guys have actually been there, done a lot of that, and you've helped me understand that okay, this is just normal. I'm not a freak after all.
Well, that's a good way to put it. And I'm a big fan of the creative liquid network. You've got one brain that comes up with a brilliant idea. You sit down with three others, suddenly there's four brains contributing to it, and it makes it even more magnificent. One of the things I try to instill on authors is that connect with other authors, because from a creative viewpoint, it just magnifies the potential of that original idea. So on that front, what's next for you guys as writers? Troy?
Probably keep going, and then look at where can we actually dig deeper on what we've kind of uncovered. I mentioned previously it was a cathartic process to actually write a book, and I know you've said before that a lot of authors say that. We're authors, by the way. That sounds pretty cool. Anyway, I think for me it's going to be looking at what is next in our own business journeys. I think there's going to be a lot more. Like we've got to a certain point, and there's not as though we sit here and go, look, we've made it, or we've done anything particular. We're on to that next step of our journey, and that's got its own trials and tribulations, its own barriers that we will work together, work through, push through. And I've got a greater awareness now that when I'm actually in that moment, that I am actually learning and growing, and that this will be part of a book potentially. But the other thing that jumped out for me is by reflecting on the past, my upbringing, and reflecting on things that I'd probably forgotten about, it's kind of highlighted to me the responsibility and the awareness around my own parenting. And I've got a young son who's 4.5, and just what I do, what I say. This sounds ridiculous, but it's heightened my awareness around the importance of the environment that I provide for him. And I think it's kind of really crystallised to me that we can't take these moments for granted, because what happens between up to 7 years of age can really define who we are later in life. So that's probably where perhaps another book lies.
Now I've got a question that I'm going to take off the cuff a little bit, because you see, I have this fascination with superheroes. I think that everyone has a superhero within them, and what I want to know is, individually, if you could pick any superhero or superpower that you could have, what would it be? Greg?
Well, it would be, for me, Superman. And I think it's about creating the good. So I feel like a lot of people in life struggle more than they need to, and it doesn't need to be that way. So if I was Superman, I would actually look to create a world where people could actually have a more enjoyable life, be more relaxed, and just know that everything's going to be okay.
That is a very wise choice. Troy?
Well, saw Justice League on the weekend. My wife took my son and just raved about it. So I said, right, I want to take him as well, because like I say, he's 4, and the more I can get him into these sorts of movies, because the greater excuse I'll have to take him. But watching that movie, my wife raved about Aquaman, and to the point where I started to question, probably the strength of our own relationship. So perhaps the more like Aquaman I could become would be better for me moving forward. But the thing that jumps out, probably power aside, Superman, and for what he stands for, and the morality and ethics that he brings into the world, or into that perceived world, I think it's going to be very, very relevant in our own world, particularly moving forward. We're on the doorstep of a tidal wave of change with what's happening around us through technology and automation, robotisation, virtualisation, etc. So I think what it means to be human is going to become more and more valuable, and I think what Superman stands for, and particularly in the context of that movie, I think that's something that I would very much like to be able to embrace myself. And of course, things like X-ray vision could come in handy for whatever.
Love that. No, there was no subliminal messaging by sticking Superman behind me. This is a natural, organic question. These are their answers. Guys, I want to thank you very much for coming in and having a chat to me today about Feet First. If you guys want to get a copy of this, the websites are down below. Go and check it out. Greg and Troy, the authors of Feet First. Thanks very much.